Hey, this is Rick Wilson, CEO of Miva and author of Dragonproof Ecommerce, as well as host of this podcast. This week, I've just got some things to say as opposed to having a guest. And the first thing I want to say, if there's one thing you can take away from this episode, it is wear a mask. The primary mode of COVID transmission, at least as best we currently understand, is aerosolized droplets. And one of the things I think is going on in society right now, and why maybe, conspiracy theories have lots of origins. But one of the things that's going on is that people are watching science unfold in real time, right? So science is fundamentally this concept of posting a thesis and then trying to debunk the thesis. And so, but the general public is not scientists. And so they're watching information change in real time, and it causes confusion. But what we do know with almost certainty is that wearing a mask is the best thing you can currently do. Specifically, N95 masks reduce risk by 95%, and simple cloth masks may be not as good as protection as surgical masks or respirators, but they can reduce transmission significantly. What happened was, with lockdowns and closed physical businesses, e-commerce is the primary method for the public to acquire masks. Physical retail was definitely not able to keep up with demand or supply masks at the beginning of March. You had a couple things going on there that were very specific. One is, depending on where they were, they had to start shutting down or changing their delivery method. The other thing is, no one was prepared for the rush on masks, just nobody. And so physical retail fundamentally failed us when we all suddenly realized we needed masks. And now most of us are realizing we need multiple masks. But it started with sellouts and shortages of true N95 masks. I think going all the way back to February-ish. Home Depot has been sold out since February. And ironically, the CDC didn't even begin recommending everyone in the United States wear a mask until early April. And on April 1st, Home Depot ordered all stores to stop selling any new supplies of N95s to consumers. Only frontline workers and institutions could buy them. And so, what happened was marketplaces became the new hunting grounds for consumers seeking masks. Amazon's and masks in the early stages were a mess. There was knockoffs from China, of varying quality and unknown delivery times, sometimes 1 to 2 or more months. And marketplaces like that are immediately rife with mask fraud. This is a function of kind of the Amazon architecture, which can be a free-for-all for scammy and crappy products. And 3M, the maker of the most popular N95 mask, investigated 4,000 reports of fraud, counterfeiting, and price gouging with their products on marketplaces. So one of the reasons I think that Amazon specifically as a marketplace was a kind of a failure, even for independent mask sellers, was that people trust Amazon inherently. Although I think, we'll see how that holds as we move through pandemic. People trust Amazon inherently, and therefore that makes it rife for scammers and fraud. This isn't that different than what we saw from eBay 20 years ago, right? People at the time trusted eBay implicitly, and then people started getting a lot of scammy goods on eBay. So I do think Amazon sort of got stuck in the middle because of their model, and it allowed for people who were trying to manipulate the marketplace to take advantage of Amazon's trust and try to profiteer. And so CDC starts distributing a free mask sewing pattern to the public in early March. And then individual sellers innovated and evolved to fill the gap and the problem. Etsy became one of the first places where DIY mask e-commerce, using free patterns and exploiting lack of supply, took off. And then currently, just a few months later, Etsy has a little over 1.1 million listings for face masks. And more than 12 million face masks were sold on Etsy during April for $133 million in sales. And so what are the limiting factors for this form of DIY manufacturing brand marketplace seller? And this is where entrepreneurs can fill in and solve a problem while people are trying to scale up. There is an upper limit for a home seller. If you're at home making masks, there's only so many you can make. But currently there's such a huge demand for masks, and that's probably not going to change, at least for a couple of years, in my opinion, that's okay until there's a reliable major source for masks. Again, but part of that is that depending on where you live in the country, you might not be able to just wander into a big box retailer or Home Depot and grab a mask. And e-commerce is really the ideal solution for selling them, whether it is a big brand or a small brand like it, or a small DIY brand on Etsy. As the mask shortage exploded, Etsy was kind of the perfect short-term solution to come in and fill that gap. You could have 100,000 people around the United States at home making masks, cloth masks based on the CDC patterns, and then they can start filling the gap. But there's a limit to where that can go. There's a couple reasons for that. One of them is that brands who have strong manufacturing capabilities will step in and put a ceiling on how many masks someone like that can make and sell. Now, on the other hand, I do not think that masks will leave Etsy, because not every brand will make masks. And then you'll have also like classic logos and stuff that don't even exist anymore as brands. So what I think you'll see is a shift in demand on Etsy from a huge quantity demand to a more specialized product demand. If I wanted a mask with a 1960s Batman logo, that's probably only coming from something like Etsy. But so it will change. So there is an upper limit as traditional retailers step in and fill the larger quantity gap. Etsy retailers will have to start morphing and handle specialized goods that you just can't find anywhere else. I think for Etsy sellers, once it evolves into a specialty product line, I don't know that I would call most Etsy sellers having what I would define as a sustainable business. It's more of a part-time business. The current situation with demand on Etsy was such that was kind of a smash and grab, where they were just filling demand because they were the only ones who could. And as that evolves, it'll go back to the more traditional Etsy handcrafted things. And masks will now just be one of them, probably forevermore. And then large apparel brands who can manufacture and distribute at scale start getting in on it. Adidas was the first athletic wear company to release a branded commercial face mask to the public. And that $16 mask sold out in one day. From there, every major apparel retailer got in on it. Everything from fashion brands like G-Star and Supreme, Bonobos, Everlane, Brooks Brothers, Guess, etc. Then you've got the designer luxury market customers like Louis Vuitton, people wearing masks as a status symbol, custom screen printing, print on demand, and then ultimately using masks as an e-commerce upsell. And essentially, all are striving to create a product that stands out from a glut of new options. There's even two new technical innovations, and one of them I might want to get for myself. Apparently there's air-conditioned masks for comfort, see-through masks for deaf lip reading. For our customers specifically, we've seen a couple groups take off. So there's people who had masks and they took off. But we've also seen more like the masks, the companies who sell the supplies to make masks really explode, right? Because there's so many people out there who need everything from the elastic to put around your ear to various types of fabrics and cloths. And those customers have exploded. And I won't be surprised if those customers can maintain this for a fairly long time. It's sort of the old adage about when Levi Strauss started Levi's during the gold rush. Everyone was out trying to find the gold, and Levi realized you want to supply the people looking for the gold with the tools they need. As you see innovation in the world of masks, right? So using the air-conditioned mask as an example, suddenly that's going to create, assuming that mask takes off, that's going to create a boom in the B2B space for people who are actually manufacturing the pieces that make that. And that's what allows them to sell at scale. B2B is different than B2C, right? So if you're an Etsy seller, the idea is to sell a mask, say for $20, and hopefully you make it for $5, and not counting your labor per se, and you make $15, and hopefully that's worth it for your time. But for B2B, if you're selling pieces and parts, you can sell them at scale. You can sell millions of units. You don't make that much on a per unit basis, but it's a sustainable long-term business. And one of the things about innovation is that innovation evolves with customer demand, right? So as customers figure out what they like and don't like, I love my cloth mask depending on where I'm going. If I'm at Costco where the whole place is pretty air conditioned, my cloth mask is fine. If I'm going to go walk 2 miles somewhere, the blue paper masks I prefer because they're slightly less hot. And I'm certainly keen on getting my hands on one of these air conditioned masks. but public's tastes change over time, and going back to necessity is the mother of invention. That's where entrepreneurs step in and they find ways to solve those problems. And then as time goes on, certain things become clear that they're going to stick, and once they stick, then you see that sort of domino into B2B and large unit economics. And then the marketing of masks. How do you sell these things without evoking despair, I would say? And part of that is content, tone, voice is a challenge, right? Safety, fear is a selling tactic. Charity and protect others is a sales tactic. I do not personally think that it's cynical at all to try to be selling face masks at a profit. Now, I find it a little cynical that Louis Vuitton would sell a $200 face mask, but that's fine. There are people who want $200 face masks from Louis Vuitton because they want to show off that they can. It was kind of like back when there was that $9,000 smartphone, but then people realized it couldn't be upgraded, but it was covered in bling. And but in general, I think marketing in this case is more about tone, right? I think if you show a picture of a nuclear bomb exploding, and therefore you need to have, I don't know why a nuclear bomb would be related to a mask, but if you show some crazy apocalyptic image and then you imply that that's why you should buy their mask, I find that cynical, right? Using pure fear to sell, I find cynical. But at this point, most people at least, have accepted that masks are part of society. And therefore, I do not find it cynical to be providing that as a product and service to the general consumers at a reasonable margin. Initially, brands satisfy demand. As time goes on, though, if you look at something like Supreme or Louis Vuitton, they literally create demand. So the higher up you go the food chain, you take a product that is in general demand, let's say a car, right? So people are aware of the need for cars, but then you have things like Ferrari and Lamborghini and Porsche that create demand for their specific product lines. And ultimately, I think at this point, you have to trust, if you're a small e-commerce seller or DIY maker, that people are now aware of the need of masks. So you don't need to be spending a lot of time explaining why they need a mask. You should be showing why your mask is cool or what its features are, etc. But I don't know that you need to be out trying to solve the politicalization of masks. And there's an X factor here of public acceptance of masks, which is where demand comes from. And I think it's something like the actual number of people who believe we should wear masks is something like 85%. But the 15% who don't are particularly loud and boisterous. And then you have, the politicalization of masks by everything from QAnon to the Trump administration, and it gets weird. And so some states and cities are mandating masks, but then you have, Georgia, where the governor insisted that the cities and counties are not allowed to mandate masks. And so, you have this whole idea of people's rights versus their need to wear a mask. In some ways, you could really relate that to when seatbelts became mandatory back in the 1980s. Many of you may not be old enough to remember that, but I certainly do. And I even remember my own father in the mid-'80s saying he'll never wear a seatbelt. Ultimately, of course, my father started wearing a seatbelt. So those things tend to evolve. In the beginning, though, there's a sense that things are being forced on you. It's just people struggle with change, and they struggle with the concept. They struggle with the concept of being forced to do much of anything. And I can tell you this: I'm a big guy. I get hot. I was out at a mall a couple weeks ago before California started locking back down, and I probably walked about 2 miles in the mask, and it was hot. Like, I get it; they're not comfortable yet, but innovation will slowly but surely probably fix that. But the assumption should be that masks are here to stay for a while. I think if I was a seller and trying to look at if I want to add face masks to my store online, especially as either an upsell item or a standalone item, it would be related to what else I sell, right? So if I sell, I'm trying to think of a good example. If I sell coffee makers, I'm not really sure why a face mask should suddenly end up on my coffee maker shop. But if I sell anything even tangentially related to what would cause a face mask to be there, adding that as either as a primary item or an upsell during checkout or both, I think is absolutely reasonable. And ultimately the idea of Dragonproof is to solve for holes in the marketplace. Going back to the idea that necessity is the mother of invention. What you want to do is listen to and then solve real customers' needs. Having diversified product serves different customer solutions, whether it's fashion, price, availability, design, or brand. You want to prioritize availability and delivery during perceived scarcity. You want to stand out from commodity products, so the blue masks, the standard cloth blue masks aren't the same thing as a Louis Vuitton mask. But that doesn't mean there's not times that people want the cloth blue mask. And ultimately you can use content to make the case for your solution. And the best way to get margin I promise you, Louis Vuitton's margin on their masks is outrageously high. And so, think about how that would work, and think about how you can make something unique that would allow you to be competitive in the market and maintain good margins. And this is all about getting used to weathering the uncertainties of the economy, culture, and for ultimately acts of God, if you will, or force majeure. One of the things about uncertainty and the necessity for innovation is that last December, no one foresaw a world in which Americans were primarily wearing face masks. Many of us had been used to seeing it in pictures from people in China or Southeast Asia, where face masks had become accepted and common. And I actually don't personally even know much about the where that originated, maybe from the original SARS epidemic in 2002. But we didn't see it coming just 6 short months ago. And now you have a multi-billion-dollar business in America that is, in my opinion, likely to sustain for a very long time. And some retailers like Adidas were able to see it and kind of move early and take advantage of it. But it is one of those things that you always want to be looking at the wins and trying to see where the uncertainty may take us. And even if you missed it then, just because you weren't Adidas, doesn't mean it's too late. Right? If face masks are here to stay, there are innovations, changes, branding, and lots of things you can do to adjust your business if it's part of what you sell to participate in this market. So thank you for listening to this edition of the Dragonproof E-commerce podcast. I hope you've enjoyed your time with me today. Please leave us a review on your favorite podcasting platform, and we will talk to you again next week.